gentleman. We like to hear him swear on the TV. He prickles with future promise. He throbs with ancient grudges. Alexei Sayle. I'm watching you and remembering that you, are my all-time favourite stand-up comedian, but you're also one of my favourite ever writers. You're not touring at the moment, you haven't got an act at the moment, but when I see you, I can see you cutting loose and going off on it, and that fury, which was your big thing, that kind of anger, is there again. And do you miss that when you're sitting there writing those books, or?
I mean, I don't think so. I sort of have a chuckle at the, I think I've got all the people in my head are laughing their heads off, so they're kind of like, that's fucking hilarious, that, Lexi. So I have a kind of permanent, one's a Red Indian, one's a construction worker, one's a cop.
None of those guys was gay. Do you know that?
There was one of them, wasn't he?
Oh, was he?
Yeah,
right,
I think
okay.
So, yeah. I thought when I stopped doing stand-up in '96 that I couldn't find a way to make it interesting for myself anymore. And in a way, I felt it had defeated me a bit because I felt like I'd run out of road with it. And what I hadn't realised was that he wasn't me. He was a persona, really, that guy in the tight suit. And so he didn't really have a life that I could talk about. And through so for like the last 15 years, I've been doing these, book readings and stuff. And through that, I found a way to talk about my own life. And so in 2012, 2013, I went back to doing stand-up for like 100 dates and stuff, doing material, half of which at least had been drawn from book readings. And that was, it was a wonderful experience. I mean, I did feel...
This is the tour that Linda referred to as diluting the legacy.
When I was writing the first volume, Stalin at my homework, my mum was still alive then. I was doing a reading at the Crosby at the art centre there, and my mum came along in her wheelchair and she heckled me, shouted out, "Lies! Lies! It's all lies!" So in a sense, I think I will always be a comic. I mean, I think at heart I will always be a comic. But I do love writing, and I do think that in some ways you can do stuff with writing, particularly writing prose.
I think these two books are you're going to be signing books later. Both the autobiographies are amazing, I think, and you've got such a great eye, and there's so much more than your own story in them. There's so much more.
Well, that's the attempt, and I do feel very proud of that. It's. I sort of see this as at least a trilogy, really, because, the Thatcher, Stalin at my homework, Thatcher stole my trousers, and then probably the third one will be called Blair's a fucking bastard. But I think that'll probably go up to like 1998, because after 1998, it's pretty much just me going to Waitrose. It's not much happens. They reduced the Ardennes pâté. It was $3.95 and it was down to 95p, and that gave me a tremendous sense of satisfaction. I do see it as certainly three volumes of memoir. But yeah, the only thing about writing memoir is it does fuck you up a bit for writing fiction, really, because you don't have to think what happens. You have to think about how you interpret it. I think it is easier ultimately, yeah.
Was this easy to write?
No, not at all.
Do you have diaries? Did you work from diaries?
I talk about it in the book a bit, but yeah, from when I got into showbiz, I used to keep a diary in the the 70s, but all I wrote in it was what I had for me tea.
And there's the Tsar Nicholas diary.
I'm a big admirer of Tsar Nicholas, who wrote on the day of the Russian Revolution in his diary, a bit windy, went for a swim. But yeah, I can tell you what I had to eat, like on November the 4th, 1971, was sausages and mash. And then later on that summer, Linda's famous 5-bean salad. But then I started keeping a work diary from about 1980, which I still do, but I've just got like appointments in it. But I think the book is about the act of remembering as well, really. There's plenty of stuff that's, kind of, can inaccurate. I mean, with the first one, there's a whole year missing, really, that I can't. And there's a bit where I go. There's a really nice, wonderfully written bit, I think, in the first volume where I hitchhike to Amsterdam and then I go to the Paradiso Club. And I was doing a book reading in Folkestone and I met the bloke who I'd hitchhiked to Amsterdam with, and he said, "No, we only got as far as Antwerp, and then we turned back." So either all those memories are false, or I went at some other. I don't know. It's impossible to tell. I mean, I remember being in the Paris, but I was out my head. But I mean, I do remember
nothing
being
is
there.
as unpredictable as the past.
No, it's true. Also with writing this, what was very difficult was I spent a couple of years almost, in a way, trying to write, I wanted to start off with me 2 years foundation at Southport. But like I remember you saying to me once, happiness writes white, really.
Yeah.
And so, I was happy at Southport and there was nothing to write about, really. Because it was just, just being happy and doing foundation, and it was a revelation, but there was nothing to write about, really.
I mean, in the first book, you've got this fantastic character, which is Molly, your mum. And in this book, you write really well about, lots of people. But the stuff about Linda in this book is lovely. So do you want to read Linda's first take? Go on.
Yeah. It's called Cruel Shoes. In the early 1970s, many in Britain still lived from day to day in great pain and distress and discomfort. The great majority of this pain, distress and discomfort was caused by their shoes. The idea that footwear should be comfortable was not one that was prevalent back then, and the situation was made worse by the fact that nearly everyone's shoes was made by a single, gigantic, lazy and inefficient monopoly called the British Shoe Corporation. You could buy your shoes in a multitude of different shops with names like Freeman, Hardy and Willis, Saxone, Trueform, Bertie, Dulcis, Manfield or Curtis, thinking that they were separate entities, when in fact they were all the same, all just fronts for the British Shoe Corporation. This might have gone some way to explaining why the young assistants would disappear for such a long time when they said they'd look in the back of the shop for a shoe in your size. I began to wonder if perhaps all the BSC shoes in Liverpool were stored in a single depot connected by underground tunnels to each of their stores, and the assistant would have to walk several miles or travel by light electric railway to get you a pair of suede Chelsea boots in a size 10. I just remember going with a mate of mine to, I can't remember, a shoe shop in St. John's Precinct there, and he asked for a pair of shoes. And I remember the shop assistant saying, "Yeah, they're great. All the trogs are wearing them." That's that, I used to say, no great butlers come from Liverpool, do they? Do you want your fucking coat hanging up or what? There's a bit I do down in my stand-up, but I talk about like Liverpool. I mean, it is transformed now. That there's fantastic hotels and restaurants and all that. But in it was a kind of culinary desert in the 70s. I remember me and Linda going for a Greek meal on the one Greek that was on Renshaw Street, I think. And we ordered the metza, the hummus and the tzatziki and the taro salata. And after a couple of minutes, the Scouse waitress came back and she said, "We've run out of pitta. Do you want Hovis?" Because that's a fucking exotic taste of fucking Peloponnese, isn't it, There's a fucking Hovis. Every time I've had to have police protection, I've ever talked about this, it's always been because of the fucking Liverpool Echo. I've had to have police protection twice in my life. There's always something to do with the Liverpool Echo. Sorry, I won't go any more into that, but, they're not that powerful these days, are they, really? No. They can't ruin me like they can't. Fuck you, Liverpool Echo. Yeah. Can't frighten me anymore. Actually, I've got all frightened now. I'm a bit worried now. They're like, You're great. I love the Liverpool Echo. It's fantastic. This lack of competition also meant that the shoes were very badly made and often broke, sometimes throwing you to the ground or twisting your ankle. For some reason, British Shoe Corporation shoes often seem to have a large piece of jagged metal as part of the inner sole that regularly snapped, stabbing you in the foot and increasing the enormous pain your footwear already gave you in normal day-to-day use. For our first proper date, I had told Linda I wanted to take her to a Chinese restaurant. So she dressed up and I too wore my best clothes. My blue velvet jacket, my white sailor trousers, buttoned up the front. I used to buy all my clothes in army surplus stores. I said it would be cheaper to join the fucking army. But I bought, a bit later after we were married, we went on a kind of holiday to Guernsey, and I bought a new jacket for the holiday in a surplus store called Lawrence Corner in Euston. And it was grey with like big black cuffs that came to a point. It was only after a couple of days when people kept asking me what time the last bus was to St. Petersburg. It's a bus driver's jacket. So I made a bit on the side anyway, driving the 73, but so my blue and white trousers are buttoned up the front, and a pair of blue and white correspondent shoes with 3-inch high stacked cork soles. In fact, the Chinese restaurant was really just a chip shop halfway between my house in Anfield and her parents' flat off Scotland Road, which had a shabby side room with linoleum on the floor and a couple of wonky dining tables for people to eat off. Linda, who had dined at considerably better places, was very kind not to mention how crappy it was. Or perhaps she was put off by the blood seeping into my socks as I limped painfully into the restaurant. Though it was only a few hundred yards from our house to the chip shop, by the time I got there, my shoes had so cut up my feet that they were bleeding profusely. I had planned to walk Linda home, but in fact, when I stood, the pain was so great that I couldn't move without her support. And so, looking like a victim of some overdressed war, I hobbled home, leaning on the shoulder of my girlfriend. There you go. Cheers. One of the things I'm trying to say in this book, in a way, is that also there's one of the myths, one of the simplicities they tell you is to be a comic or to be anything, that you have to be that kind of Peter Kay character who apparently recorded every advert from the invention of VHS tape, and he'd label them and then he'd do them, and you have to be obsessively interested in comedy. And in a sense, I was never that interested in comedy, which is one of the things that I think made me so original, because I wasn't hampered by anybody else, that I drew as many influences from performance art and the cinema and politics as I did from stand-up comedy, in a way. It was what made my act, I think, so original. So I don't, I'm not that interested in reading other comedians' memoirs. I'm trying to think. Well, I mean, some of the reviews for this book have made the point. What I did with acting to some extent, I think comics do with writing, that they see the book as just a piece of merchandising or something. I think I spent 5-6 years working on this, and I think because that's what it deserves. If you're going to write a book, then you should put that work in, really, and not skimp or not just make it some kind of merchandising opportunity, which I think a lot of other comics, Lee Evans, do, for instance.
I saw you a couple of years ago doing your stand-up. Are there any plans to do anything in the future regarding stand-up again?
Yeah, I would like to, really. It took me 17 years to write that act that you saw. So I'll be performing again in 2000, and I'll be 83 or something. Teleportation, what a load of crap that is. God bless our ant overlords. Oh, I always liked arachnids. So it's finding stuff. I mean, one of the things I admire about like Stuart Learson is that he does a new act basically every year, 2 years, and I don't know how you go about putting an act together that quickly, really. I think it requires a lot of
Did you say Stuart
touring.
Lee?
Stuart Lee, yeah. I think it requires a lot of touring, really. Obviously, I've improvised. There's some bits tonight that I've done that I actually, just in conversation, I think I thought could make the foundation of a bit of stand-up, and there is stuff that you'll have heard from when you came to see me doing stand-up. I would love to go out and do it. I say again that I love doing it. I was much happier doing it this time round than in the old days. One of the things, I don't know if I talk about this in the show, I'm sure, but one of the things is that audiences now, for good or ill, the audiences are much more respectful now. I think, when I was touring, it was very post-punk, it was very wild. You had all these hecklers, and you used to have to work up put-downs, that kind of series of put-downs that you would use. And I was playing Bristol Colston Hall, and somebody shouted, I did a line, and somebody shouted out, "You said that the last time you were here." So I used one of my prepared put-downs, which was, "Well, you're a daft twat to pay to hear it again then, aren't you?" And he said, "You said that last time as well."
I was with you in Edinburgh just when you first started that last tour, and you were quite quiet. We had a meal, and you were quiet, and then suddenly you're on stage, and you were Alexei Sayle again, and it was kind of terrifying, that Jekyll and Hyde transformation. Does that take a toll out of you? Do you feel?
I don't think so, really. I was surprised as anybody by that. That I thought, when I was talking about doing, and people, I do interviews and stuff, doing the stand-up, and I'd say, no, it's much more reflective now. It's about my own life. There's not going to be that insanity, that kind of energy, that kind of hatred and anger that there was when I was doing stand-up in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And the moment I got on the stage, it was like, "You fucking cunt, you fucking bastard, shit!" It all came back.
You said all that, and I was thinking, I'm going to go and see like Norm Macdonald or something, and then you got up, and it was like, oh my God,
all that. And that was it was. It is joyful to do that, and to be able to do it now, in a way where I'm completely happy with the material and with the venues and the crowds. I've also, I can't be. I was obsessed before with like being the best, like the best. In the world, in a sense. And now I just sort of accept there's so many comics out there that I can only do.
What number are you? What have you
Well, of course, in that Channel 4's Top 100 Comedians, when it was first broadcast in 2007, I came in 17th out of the 100 comedians in the world. Largely, I think, because I said I'd give them an interview.
Right.
And then when they did it again in 2010, I was 72nd. Because I said I wouldn't give them an interview. I always said, that a child in Liverpool is like, a child from Mongolia will know their way around a pony.
Yeah.
Horseflesh. A child in Liverpool will know their way around a gag. They'll hear a gag and they say, well, I thought the setup was all right, but, I thought the punchline was tending towards bathos. I'll leave it there. Thanks. Good night.
Thank you.